And we are live.
I see a
Hello.
live button. The button says
The
live.
button says live. If the
Live.
button says live, we are live.
Oh yeah, I forgot to turn on the. I need to buy an in studio button somewhere in my office where I can turn like a red blinking light or something. Just for
We're
people
live.
with Tourette's. That'll help anybody with Tourette's. There you go, right
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Or epilepsy.
What are the two?
Yeah. No
Sorry.
joke about
You calm down.
Not
Calm down.
politically correct.
That's right. That's who
Hey,
we are.
This power of you thing is getting to be very interesting. And I'm just going to speak for myself here for just a minute, but I love the topic of leadership. I'm fascinated by the topic of leadership because it is such a complex thing. When we talk about leadership, it becomes a placeholder. People go, "Oh, I know what that is." No, you don't. Trust me on this. You really don't, because I've been doing this for 40 years and I'm still learning stuff. So what I like about the power of you is we get to take an hour and take a piece. And it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, you pick this piece up and you start lifting it up, and the whole puzzle kind of comes with it. And it's kind of, I did not know those pieces were attached. I didn't know that those were connected in that way. Yeah. So we get to take the puzzle apart, and hopefully people can begin to put it together in a way that makes sense for them. And that's exciting for me.
That's a good personal note. It's funny you mentioned it, because when we started this plan, we started, gosh, there's a bunch of power reviews under our belt. I don't even know the count. We should someday know the count. I don't know.
Yeah, put a number on it, like we do with all.
But more than a handful. I know that. It's fun because it really is that, the intention was to put something together where we just show up in the community and it's like, we're going to give this back to you. Here's thoughts about leadership you may not have ever thought about, but it is that, you and I talked about this before, the golden thread, right? There's all of these things that stitch together with a thread that has nothing to do with what line of business you're in. It has to do with leading.
With leading, yeah. Yeah, and which is agnostic in terms of where it's applied.
Yes, and it is fun. Oh, we're a little irreverent sometimes. I think that's I didn't want to say irrelevant, but irreverent is probably
irreverent. Thank you for making that clarification.
Yeah, thank you. Just to be clear. So,
but yet, to that point, though, today's topic is on the nature of spirit and where is its place in this whole thing. And as we're talking about the evolution of the power of you, we started off with an idea, and that idea has actually started to manifest itself in some very interesting ways. Yeah. And that's what spirit makes possible when you can tap into it and you don't layer on top of it all kinds of shoulds. I mean, the only should we've got here is to start approximately at noon on Thursday.
Yeah. Should be.
That should be. It should be. That's about the only should that we have in here, and we're going to kind of wing it and guide it towards a conversation around leadership. But in that box, or with those guardrails, the fulsomeness of the spirit begins to emerge in terms of what are we actually playing with here, and that expression becomes greater and greater and greater as we do this.
Yeah, and it is fun. It is fun to see what's evolving out of this, and the other. When we started with the theory, with this, and remain in detachment, right? It is about how do we serve?
How do we serve?
And which there's a certain law around that, but although we won't get into the laws, but there is a law around service. But yeah, I love that because it's fun because, and today as we talk about spirit in service of spirit, not to segue into the conversation today,
but if you were going to, it would sound like this.
If I was going to, but in service of spirit, it is that spirit, right? That we spend a lot of time in those mindset, imagination, spirit, and it is that spirit that really, truly defines. That's the impact of leadership, the spirit, how we lean into this together, and we do it without detachment. We do it with a purity, and so it's going to be fun.
We do it with detachment.
Not without with detachment. Did I say without detachment? No, we're attached to it.
We're attached to it. No, we're going to be detached.
Maybe I've been talking too much today. It's been a long day. I've been talking
already. Yeah, same here. So I'm going to pop a slide up for us. And
On that note, let's use the word so I don't say the wrong things. And then,
so here, I mean, 4 basic talking points that we're going to ding, 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 ping on
yeah,
today. This spirit embodies everything. I'll just kind of start with that. So, I mean, this is kind of a de facto definition of the word spirit. And the Greeks, Aristotle, referenced, or Plato actually was referencing that kernel that gives life to everything. And he wasn't just talking about human beings, give life to a rock. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's something in there that actually imbues it with form. And so for the human animal that we are, imagination lives at the threshold of spirit, and it's kind of our gateway into that realm, that domain that looks to fully express itself. And in that sense, spirit becomes the essence of everything. It's the expressed essence of everything. So when we're looking at this, and I love this quote, and actually it's a paraphrase from Thomas Troward, who is a fascinating writer. Those of you that don't know Thomas Troward, be prepared for a very deep dive if you decide to read anything from him. Philosopher extraordinaire. He was talking about, and he's got an actual lecture that he gave at Edinburgh on the title of it was Beauty. And the net of that lecture was beauty. I mean, you've heard the aphorism, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, what we're beholding when we see beauty is the essence that's made visible. That spark that gave life to it. And if you're really tapping into a masterwork, you can begin to see the life that's in that masterwork. That's where the beauty comes from. It's a beautiful sunset. You see the life in that sunset, or Mozart sonata. Just the beauty.
Yeah.
So the question we're going to play with here is this last one: is your leadership beautiful? In other words, does it have spirit as its foundational force?
Yeah. And this is going to be a fun conversation, all of these together. And Troward, I can pull out my 9-pound book and show everybody the 9-pound, the 9-pound Troward book. But it is, and I would recommend, if you haven't read Thomas Troward, read Thomas Troward, bring a lunch. Because you're going to be there for a while.
Yeah, but a glass of wine would be advisable too.
Yeah, good. That's right. A good cab would be great. But it is interesting. And the thing I like about this slide, Glenn, is I love that last question: is your leadership beautiful? When we think about leadership, one of my favorite phrases is ease and elegance. Ease and elegance. Is it elegant? Is it beautiful? And we equate those things together, right? Elegance and beauty, very, very close. And when you think about your leadership, it's one thing to think about, that I'm gonna make a diamond out of this chunk of coal. I'm gonna lead, but by God, I'm gonna lead this team. We're going places.
We're gonna squeeze the life out of it.
Oh yeah, I got it. I'm not gonna let go. But is it truly beautiful? And that's again where imagination plays. That's that gate into the spirit that leads to elegance and the beauty of it. So it's
and we're, so speaking of quotes, we've been bouncing the word imagination around here. We're going to use imagination and spirit not so much interchangeably, but as you're listening to this, I want you to just kind of pay attention to the relationship between imagination and spirit. And we've got a graphic here that'll illustrate this in a minute. But again, I kind of go back to that first quote. Imagination is lives at the threshold. It's a gateway into spirit. And that spirit is that force that wants to be expressed fully. And every organization has that source, that founding source. Every human being is that founding, it's got a founding source. We are all unbelievably unique. There has never been or never will be another me. And everything that I've produced in my life is unique in and of itself. There will never be another one that can be replicated in the same way that it is. So there's that founding source. So as we discover the secret of imagining, we are discovering the secret of spirit. Spirit and imagination, human imagination, are synonymous terms. they link.
Yeah.
If you want to access spirit, you have to be able to play with your imagination.
Yeah. And I love how Neville said this. And you just said it, but I'll just, spirit and imagination, human imagination are synonymous terms. Who we imagine we are today won't be who we imagine we are tomorrow.
Right. And most people do not curate their imagination. They let it run away from them.
Right.
And they imagine a term for it can be awfulize. A lot of people awfulize with their imagination.
Good word. Yeah.
They imagine what's going to go wrong. I'm like, very seldom do we curate what's going to go right. That's not the default for most people.
How could I possibly screw this up?
Yeah.
Let me imagine all that
force. It has force. Everything's energy, and that imagining has an energetic quality to it that either can contract or expand.
Yeah. Very, very much so.
So this goes right directly to how we define leadership. Dr. White, take it away.
Well, so every time you're with us, you hear us, we talk about this slide. There's 2 slides. We talk every time. And this is the beginning of the conversation. Leadership is the activity of influencing others to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. And if we take that sentence apart, it is leadership is active. As leaders, we cause movement. That is what we do. We create movement. We don't cause movement. We create the opportunity for movement. Right? Movement, and in turn, is caused by other things. The leadership is the activity of influencing others. So it is, what are we doing? How are we showing up? How are we influencing? What's our Bob Proctor called this, bless his heart, right? What's our vibrational state when we show up? You've all been in a room where you've walked in the room and you could feel the tension. You could feel you can feel it when you walk in. How are we showing up? Which in turn transposes to how we influence others. How do we be, do, and act as we're influencing others to co-create? How do we do this together? Not command and control, but we're co-create, coordinated, a mutual commitment, our communication. So we create that. It's an autonomous. We create a coordinated. We've agreed together. We have mechanisms to understand and agree and communicate movement in pursuit of the worthy ideal. And as a leader, when you think of this sentence, you not only for your behavior, for who you are and your role in the organization, particularly as we talk about imagination today, think of these pieces as you're heading into a conversation. What is the activity? How am I influencing? Who are the others? How am I showing up? Who do I need to be? When I'm showing up.
Yeah. So imagine the spirit that wants to be present as you're entering that room.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Just imagine. What do I want them to walk away with? That is a function of this, that essence of who I am that causes movement before I open my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, the image of Superman comes to my mind because if there's a commitment on July 11th, we're going to go to the new Superman movie.
Are you? Okay.
My grandson and I, we're going. He's my guy. Superman's my guy. But I'll fess that up and
hold it up.
Well, there's 3 guys.
It's on your desk. It's on your desk.
Superman, James Tiberius Kirk, and anyway, we won't get into.
Where's your Superman idol?
The third guy.
You got a Superman doll there.
I do. He's right here.
Yeah,
he's right there.
Yeah,
he's right there. There he is. He's with me every day. And the third guy is Chuck Norris, but that's a different story. Okay, so as we're thinking of that, it is, to your point, and I love that analogy because it is the determination of when you stop and pause for that moment and you imagine, who am I showing up at? It is your imagination that's taking action.
Yeah,
and then it is your decision to become that. So what is the imagination? Who do I need to be?
Yep.
Who do I need to be? And then becoming that, having the courage to step through that fear in that moment and become that in the art of influencing, because influence is what we're seeking to do. Not motivate, not dictate, not delegate, we're looking at who do I need to be to be able to influence.
And then that pursuit of a worthy ideal piece, this is kind of
Yeah.
that worthy ideal from an organizational perspective and from individuals. And Dolan just mentioned we're not motivating here. What we're looking to do is inspire, and inspiration lives inside. Inspiration is inside. It's not out there somewhere. Motivation is out there. I'm going to go get that. I'm going to have that. I'm going to move away from that. Those are motivators. Inspire is this wants to come out. This wants to come out. And the way we define that has to do with worthy ideal, something that makes a difference to me. And it has to do with meaning. It's not vision. It's not my goals or objectives. It's what matters. It's what matters. And what matters is linked real closely to spirit. What matters for me is the expression of who I am as fully and as richly as it can possibly be expressed in this moment in time. What was being expressed when I was in my 20s, very different than what it is today as I'm expressing who I am. Completely different. Yeah. And that's what we want to tap into, that inspirational component, which is where spirit is actually present. And it's hard to ignore when you can tap into that.
Nicely said.
So
nicely said.
We've got reference models here. And again, we do this every time we do Power Review, but these, in the work that Doland and I do together with our clients, these are the two primary models that we organize all of our work around. It provides an interesting structure for us to do that work. From a coaching perspective, the client brings the content. What are you dealing with? What's up for you? What do you want to have? But they need a structure in order for it to make sense, in order for the exploration to take place. And that's what these two models actually provide, is a structure that allows for a meaningful exploration. The 4-pillar model, we'll just start with that because we're going to go immediately to the leadership universe and unbundle the spirit underneath that. But
Sure.
you talk a little bit about the 4 pillars, just very briefly, kind of a cliff note.
Yeah. So I'll give the 30-second quick explanation. Trust and autonomy. Trust is that willingness. Boy, I had so much fun talking about trust this week with a
yes, you have.
With a CEO and other stuff this week. Trust is that willingness. Trust is I trust me, which is developing that trust for ourselves, which we'll get into from imagination. There's a way pivotal part into that. That's a highly technical term, way pivotal. Then autonomy is that willingness to try, being willing, and that's for you being willing to let people try and them being willing to try, knowing that there is a mutual trust, there's a reciprocal trust that's built. Communication and transparency means that we are willing to be open and transparent. And key word is you can actually draw a line through all of those and replace that with vulnerable. I'm willing to be vulnerable and have a conversation with you about where we are and be radical in that conversation. I'm willing to be completely truthful with you, which binds to trust and autonomy. Growth and innovation is that thing that happens we're not just talking about in a business, we're talking about in the spirit of leadership. Growth and innovation is that commitment to support, collaborate, grow your team, grow your people, grow yourself. It's that ongoing commitment which yields measurable growth and ROI, because that comes into conversations. So how do I get ROI out of that? And innovation is that willingness to think new, to try new, to be willing to the colloquialisms, to try fast, fail fast, to do all of the things that happen in there. And systems of accountability, again, is not Trello, is not a spreadsheet, is not a system of accountability, is our willingness to communicate with each other, that commitment to do that, and living into that system where we are accountable to each other and with each other as we move towards that worthy ideal. Not the outcome, but as we move towards that worthy ideal. The outcome is a step. And that's the 4 pieces of the pillar. And they overlay how you enact the things that we talk in the leadership universe. So the leadership universe leads with, this is who we are as leaders. Now, what do you do with it? And that's where the 4 pillars come into play.
Yeah. And all leadership takes place within this universe, what we call the leadership universe. And most typically typically you're going to hear people talk about when they're talking about leadership, particularly when they're talking about it in developmental language. I need to develop myself, or I need to develop my people. The skills that are focused on have to do with how do we develop a vision? How do we articulate an effective vision that motivates people? And once again, notice the difference between motivation and inspiration. A lot of vision work is around motivation. That's why we spend so much time wordsmithing this thing. Got to get it right. What's important about vision, and this is the why. What's important about vision isn't so much what the words are. What's important about vision is what it makes possible. And if you're focused on motivation, you're going to be missing what it makes possible, which is inspiration. And that's where spirit begins to live. So the why, what, and how: vision, strategy, tactics. Why, what, how: vision, strategy, tactics. These are the three areas that are almost exclusively worked with when we're looking at leadership.
Yes.
As most people think about it. Where the real jewels are, if you want to grab the brass ring, you're going to be moving into these bottom two domains. Mindset is a set of beliefs, values, experiences, all kinds of stuff that aggregate together. And in an organization, it's called your culture. In a human being, it's called your belief system, is another word for it, the paradigm that you operate out of. And what's important about mindset is most people they don't have a clue about what it contains. We really don't. 90+% of the people on this planet do not know themselves well. And why that becomes important is because behavior, and study after study shows this, human behavior is driven by 95% of my behavior is driven by subconscious triggers that are out of sight, out of mind. They live in the mindset. And until we can begin to explore what that is, we're going to be held hostage to those unseen drivers, those unseen triggers. Why did you do that? I don't know. I just felt like it. Oh, really? Well, where did that feeling come from? I think the way I feel. Well, that's a dangerous, slippery slope. To think the way you feel is kind of, yeah.
It makes that touch queasy. It was like,
If you can begin to play with mindset, it opens up the possibility of working with imagination in a very different way. You can work with imagination at why, what, and how at the vision piece.
Sure.
You can imagine futures. But if you really want to leverage imagination as a gateway into that core, this is where you get breakthrough thinking. This is where you get breakthrough performance, where you're not just getting incremental, you're getting phase shifts. It's a quantum move. And that's where, when you tap into spirit and soul, that's what becomes possible. And that's what we want to pay particular attention to here. Go ahead.
No. I love this quote. Go ahead with the quote, but I love this about phase shifting. This is just everybody stop, take a breath. Here we go. This is
put it in gear.
This is it's going to get deep. So here we go.
Without the play of the the fantasy, Carl Jung called it fantasy, but without the playing of fantasy, no creative work has yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable. Now, I want you to just stop and think about that for a minute. Everything that has ever been experienced by mankind was invented twice. First as an idea, and then it came into being in physical form when somebody got committed to actually bringing it to life, having it come out. It's birthed first in imagination. It's birthed first in imagination. That's where we want to go. And this is where the pursuit of a worthy ideal becomes so important.
Oh, man.
In terms of how you articulate it, in terms of how you invite people to explore. What's this mean for you? Here's what we say we're going to go. Here's what we say is important. If we get that, what do you get to have, do, or be that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be? That question kind of stops people because they're never asked that question, particularly in an organization. If we hit this number, what do you get to have, do, or be that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't hit that number? If they can't answer that question, you're going to get checkbox behaviors. They're going to, well, I did what was required. Yeah. What's your job? To do what my boss tells me. Yeah. It's kind of, ooh.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Innovation and creativity go right out the window.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So
I love that. That's an important statement. There are many books that talk about that. Wattles talks about that. Napoleon Hill talks about that. Troward talks. There's many, and there's other in ancient texts that talk about what was about the two shifts. If we go back to ancient, right, to Stoicism and other of our favorite people. But as we think through that, though, it really truly is when you, as a leader, that it is twice. No creative work has ever yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable. It is the imagination before it becomes real. The imagination becomes, as a leader, and you are, earlier, Blaine, I was thinking about this morning. Early. I've been up since like 3
o'clock. Yes.
I don't know. It happens as we get old. But thinking about this, as a leader, when we go back to the definition, leadership is the activity of, it recalls movement. It's the activity of influencing. And interwoven through all of that is the debt we owe to the power of the play of the imagination is incountable. Because that stitches through that entire sentence. We can't know where the ideal without imagination. We can't know influencing without imagination. We can't know activity without imagination.
Right. We
can't know others without imagination. Through that's that thread, it stitches through all of that sentence to pull it all together on why this matters. And sometimes as a leader, we go, especially if we've been trained deeply in those top 3 layers of the leadership universe.
Yep.
Right. I've got my Drucker book. I'm ready to go, man. We're going. And we lose track of this bottom stage. You can sometimes go, this sounds a little woo-woo to me, but you must master this.
Yeah.
Grasshopper.
Yes.
Snatch the pebble.
And it's not easy to do. Otherwise, if it was easy to do, everybody would be doing it.
I'm far from it.
Oh boy, same here. Through imagining, in the way that we're talking about it as a mechanism by which you access spirit, by which you unleash the power of spirit, is really kind of a difficult proposition for some common challenges here. Mental blocks can prevent this creative flow. You just think about the difficulty that people have with becoming quiet in order to hear that voice and that internal voice inside that is saying, how about this? How about this? How about this? We've got so much noise in our head that being able to quiet it long enough to hear something else emerge that's unique, that is relevant to the situation, that isn't an iteration of what went before. These mental blocks start coming into play.
Right.
And these top two kind of come in together here. Difficulty forming clear mental images. If I can't begin to even imagine possibilities, different possibilities, then I can't even begin to see a picture of what might be that new future state. And if we don't have a picture of something, and I don't mean fine art, but we got a sense in our imagining mind here of what it could be, then we start filling in the blanks. But if we can't quiet the noise, we can't even get creative enough to imagine that future state.
Yeah, that's really the first two. All of these are such powerful points because when you think about that, the blocks that we put up, it hooks into the third, interrupted thought processes. The blocks that we put in place, right? The mental blocks that prevent creative flow, but the interrupted thought processes, particularly when we're leaning into imagination. For me personally, we can sometimes allow ourselves a what if thought, and it puts if I can imagine this outcome, I can imagine this worthy ideal, I can imagine this, and there is a but what if that
Yeah.
occurs there. But what not? And one of my favorite things is to take what ifs and have it sit on my stool back there next to my
Yeah.
little keyboard. You go wait over there. I'll come back to you. You can tell me the what ifs later. But in the meantime, I'm going to be focused on this. And one of the things I was thinking about on the lack of inspiration or starting points, when we think about inspiration, the key thing to inspiration for me personally, and probably similar for you, is just taking action.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for inspiration for action, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah. 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 That first step starts things. You got, if you've ever tried to, you've got a car that's stalled, ran out of gas or whatever, and it's just dead in the water, so to speak. Trying to turn the car around when it's not moving. Just imagine that, trying to turn a car when it's not moving. You got to kind of push real hard on it to get it to point in a different direction. It's not moving, but you got to, if it's moving, it becomes easier to turn. If it's moving, you can actually facilitate a shift in direction. If it's moving, the required energy to accelerate is less and less. But you've got to get started. I came across this factoid the other day.
Yeah.
Playing chess. I mean, I used to play chess when I was a kid, and I was, I enjoyed it. Sure. I'll just say I enjoyed it. But the factoid was this: there are actually more at the beginning of a game. There are more potential moves than there are atoms in the universe.
Yes.
More potential moves than there are atoms in the universe.
Yes.
So that first move then begins to determine what that outcome is going to be at some point in time, but that outcome is never guaranteed. And because there are more choices available than you can possibly imagine, you have a lot, and this is where autonomy comes into play. What's the choice I can make here? I seem to be blocked here. What's a choice I've never thought of? See, that's where imagination starts to come into play.
Yeah. Nicely said. Yeah.
Kobayashi Maru.
Kobayashi Maru. Yeah. There was what came to my mind instant. So I'm a young man, way pre-gray hair. I'm working for a company. I'm president of a global services company. I'm a young dude, right? I don't know how the hell I got that job, but I'm a young dude. I'm president of this company. We're doing crazy stuff. I had an opportunity to play chess with Garry Kasparov.
Oh, Gary Kasparov. I did not know that.
Kasparov was world champion chess player, and we played with a chocolate chessboard. There was white chocolate and dark chocolate, and I was the white chocolate guy. And the deal was every time he took one of my pieces, I had to eat it. And let me say, I didn't feel good after. He was merciless, and I ate every piece. I ended up eating almost everything. So yes, I thought of that. It made me think of my old friend Gary, who's now off with other things, another day. But it's funny because that's that lesson that I learned through the World Chess Federation, through that kind of that thing, is that one movement starts to set in motion. It sets in motion a process on that path. Yep. And the key thing is that one first movement where you take your step forward. And it could be right or wrong. You may end up eating the piece. Trust me. But take a step.
There's no guarantees. And this is the nature of brainstorming. I mean, fruitful. But I mean, one of my oldest clients, and I say oldest clients in terms of tenure, I worked with this firm as a client for about 12 years, was IDEO, the design firm. And they were famous for rapid iteration. I went out with them. I would bring my clients to them, and we would prototype new ideas. But part of their whole process was brainstorming. And and it was fascinating watching how difficult it was for people to get started in brainstorming, because the mindset of, I don't want to look foolish, I don't want to sound foolish, I don't want to bring an idea to the table that's going to get shot down. What if? I mean, the what if about imagining what could go wrong, how might I look, what might they think of me, all of that stuff begins to create paralysis.
Yeah.
And IDEO was masterful at this. Just put something out there, and then it's kind of like improv. We just start playing with it. If somebody says
Oh
something,
boy.
grab that and you run in a different direction with it. And if you've ever done improv, it is a hoot. It is fascinating experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never done it with that. I've done it in music where I just walk in and go, what key are we in? And off we go. And
there you go.
yeah, until they change their mind and we move to B flat. That's a whole nother story. All right.
Oh, yeah. But all of this drops into spirit. What
Yes.
brings life to the process? What brings life? What is it that wants to be expressed more fully, not incrementally, but more fully? All of a sudden, there's a breakthrough. And it's like, oh my God, we've never even thought of that possibility. Let's go do that. But there's where this last one comes into play. When that breakthrough idea comes through and they go, let's go do that. And somebody goes, well, I'm not sure how we're going to go about doing that. I don't know how we're going to do that. Premature howling is probably one of the biggest impedances to overcome. This premature howling, the tyranny.
Oh God. Thank you for doing it. Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead. Keep going. I would.
The moment somebody raises the question how, it is guaranteed. I will go to the bank with this, with everything I've got, that they are referencing something that they've experienced before.
Yeah.
They're looking backward, going,
I
don't see a way to do that. In the past. I mean, or we've tried something like that before. It didn't work then. So I'm not sure. It's almost always past focused, and it's all organized around where's it going to go off the rails.
Yes.
It's not going to work.
Yes. I'm sorry. That was a conversation this week with a client, and it was specific. Oh, we've done that before and it never worked. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to be different this time. And it was that moment of, it's like, well, thank you for that. I'm so happy you brought that up. So let's explore that a little bit. But it's funny because I'll same thing. I'll go to the bank. I will write a check. It is always past focused. The how grounds right back to, well, we've done this before.
Yep.
It didn't work last time we did it.
Yeah.
What's going to be different this time? Last time I just waited for it to pass and everything was always grinds to that. Such a powerful tenet. And as a leader, listen for that. When you're in an imagination conversation, when you're in that phase of determining ideas, as you're moving into this, shameless plug, we did a 5-series power review on decisions. Go find it. But as you're heading into that, when that how comes up, listen for that, because it's an indicator of where you are and where they are.
Yep.
And you're not in the same place.
Language creates and reflects reality.
Oh.
So if you go too early into how, you're creating a reality. I mean, literally the definition of insanity here, doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yes.
Well, we did that before. Let's do that. Let's do that again. That got us a little bit of a bump.
It'll be different this time.
Yeah, it'll be. I promise it'll be different this time.
Absolutely.
But it also reflects an internal mindset. Yeah. And to your point about the client that you were working with, we tried that before. Well, that didn't work then. It's past focused. The mindset is, and then you unbundle that going, well, okay, what was in place then that isn't in place now?
Yes.
Imagination. Well, if we were to do it and pull it off that way, what might that look like?
Right. If we were to reimagine the outcome, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And if we were to reimagine different steps, what would that look like? Let's go through that exercise. And that is that key moment. You said it right. It is a clear reflection on that gap on where you are and where they are. And you can't, just as a pivot point on this a little bit, is when that moment happens with the tyranny of how, you can't bypass it. Right. You must deal with it there.
Yep. You've got to unbundle that. And Yep. And that unbundling can be a creative process. If you just let it stand and
Sure.
walk away from it, all of a sudden, all creative movement is stopped, and all you're left with is what you had before.
Yeah, we could do that. This is a thing you and I developed, God, years ago together. We co-developed this thing, but I'll go back to it. We can do the negative connotation. Let's take 5 minutes and write down every reason why we're going to fail.
Yep.
Write them down. Which
Yep.
people go, well, we're not here. No. How are we going to die? We get hit by a bus, plane can fall out of the sky. There could be asteroids. San Andreas Fault could open up. There could be a rattlesnake in my bathtub. Let's go through. I think
How
of
am I going
Woody.
to fail at this?
I think of Woody, my favorite guy. Anyway, so there's a snake in anyway, there's a snake in my boot. So you think about it, take 5 minutes and do that. And it's amazing because that takes that perspective and shifts it into, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Let's reimagine these things. Now let's talk about these things. And it positions them so they're visual, oral. You can then begin to have the conversation without saying, well, why do you think we're going to? And you can move, you can deal with that but you must that's just a tactical thing on how to do it. The most important thing is when that happens is you have to deal with that moment, with the how in that moment.
Yeah.
You can't deal with it out there.
No, it's got to truly. And the difficulty in it is, in part because people like to be right. Well, you don't understand. We tried that before. Well, no, I hear that you said that. No, you don't understand. We tried that before. It didn't work. And they will keep coming back. Argue for your limitations, and they will be yours. People will argue vociferously for why it can't work. They almost never argue vociferously for what it could be.
Right.
I want you to stop and think about that, folks, as you're listening to this. When you're trying to make something happen out there that's unique, that's different, that is significantly different than it was before, how frequently do people go, yeah, but, and then they argue for their yeah, but. And it's kind of like, wow. And
yes, that's a word we should get added to the dictionary. Yeah, but.
You don't understand. Yeah, but.
It's like, yeah, okay.
So where we're going with this in part is, again, imagination is linked. It's the gateway. It's the threshold. It lives at the threshold of the spirit. You play with the imagination. You open up the possibility. And that's what leadership's about. Leadership's about identifying and articulating possibility so that probability can emerge. And in your organization and with yourself, when you're thinking about this, there are some ways to there are some things to pay attention to symptomatically that can give you an indication that you're not really utilizing imagination particularly well. And this is just 4. There's a number of them, but here are 4 key ones. And the first one is incremental versus breakthrough thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset is around efficiency rather than new possibility. Innovation becomes about efficiency gains. Well, let's just do this 10% better. 10% better. Now, 10% better was great. I mean, micro improvements, no problem with that at all. Sure. But if you want to scale to a completely different level, that's not going to get you there. What is the breakthrough possibility that would make the difference? What is the difference that would make the difference? That's the thinking that you want to encourage, but almost nobody does in organizations that kind of breakthrough thinking because it gets shot down real quickly.
Yeah, that is so true. That is such a key word, Blaine. Well, I'll do the second one, but it's breakthrough, and it's hard to shift that. And number 2 kind of addresses that. Familiar problem solving approaches to unique challenges. The response to novel situations is to force fit them into existing mental models. 2 key things. We've got a new thing. I've got a novel situation, which means this is a new thing. This is how we would solve things like that before. Remember, all situations are different. They may smell the same. They may be stinky. Different kind of stinky. And you can't, one of the symptoms then is we've done things similar to this before by doing this, which is a complete elimination of breakthrough thinking.
Yep.
Number three,
risk aversion that morphs into creative paralysis. And you'll hear this all the time. What could go wrong? This is, again, the tyranny of the house starts. There's an element of that in this.
Oh, yeah.
The mindset of most people is organized. And this is, psychology 101. Most people will organize their behavior around danger aversion. Yeah. Don't go there. Yeah. You'll fall off the cliff if you go in that direction. So a lot of the conversation is around what could go wrong, and it will consistently outweigh what could be right about this. So this is where the question of for the sake of what really becomes important when you're leading an organization or a team into new territory. Why does this matter? Because if you don't identify and lock into why does this matter as a positive outcome, as a positive realization, what matters now is avoiding catastrophe. Yeah, that's the default that people will go to. What could go wrong? Let's avoid that. Let's avoid that. And you lose creativity, you lose innovation. Right. And spirit gets a cap put on it. Spirit, by definition, is looking to fully express itself in new ways. In new ways. I mean, you take an acorn. I mean, this is a real rough metaphor, but you do not see an oak tree in that acorn. I mean, you look at it, and I don't care how microscopically you look at that acorn, you are not going to see an oak tree. It needs to express itself in various stages. Butterfly, same sort of a thing. Caterpillar moves into the chrysalis and it literally dissolves. If you open up a chrysalis, all you're going to get is a gooey mess. Well, that's all you're going to find in there. Let it gestate long enough and out emerges this incredibly gorgeous butterfly. That's a breakthrough. That's a breakthrough. And it's a focus on what's possible. What's possible. That's what we want to encourage as leaders. And it's a tapping into spirit.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I remember as a kid, remember opening up. Oh, where's the butterfly?
Where's the butterfly? There's no butterfly.
All I see is jelly. Anyway, brainstorming sessions, predictable ideas. And I'll go quick on this one. But there's little evidence of divergent thinking. Key words, divergent thinking before convergent decision making. What can we think differently before we come together before we converge to a decision? And go back and listen to the recording on decision making. There's a lot of meat in that. It'll take you 8 hours to get through it, but trust me, it's a big one. But when you think about that, you produce when you come together to produce and you're brainstorming and you're predicting and you're creating predictable ideas, things that we've all been in meetings. It's funny, Blaine, maybe think of, I sent you back a note saying, boy, this brings back war stories in my mind, right? Where you're in a room and everybody's kind of going, here's what we did before. And there's nothing new. Here's the ideas we had last year when we talked about this. Here's the 5 ideas we had then. And it's like, great, meeting's over. Let's go get 5 more people and we'll figure this thing out. So when you do that, it's a symptom for you as a leader. Watch for these things, for all these 4. There's many, many more things. But when you think of that, when you get predictable ideas, you are not in a mode of divergent thinking, and you're caught in likely you're still sitting in the how. The how was never dealt with because of that.
Yeah, and go back to Carl Jung's quote: "Without the play of fantasy, adults do not like to play with fantasy. It's a child's thing." Yeah, we outgrew that when we were 6 years old. Yeah. No, don't outgrow it. Fantasy is a magic little piece that opens the door to what the spirit can make possible.
Yeah.
What if? Which actually moves us into how do you curate imagination? Yeah. Creativity requires patience with the process. And I do a lot of work in the medical arena with hospital systems and with docs.
Yeah.
And one of the hallmarks of and I've worked with brain surgeons and just prescribe or diagnose and prescribe. The faster the diagnosis, the quicker we can get a prescription. So diagnose and prescribe. And speed is what we pride ourselves on in that environment.
Yeah.
Speed. Taking time, backing up, taking a breath, settling down, slowing down, go slower to go faster, all that kind of stuff. Creativity requires patience with the process. And there's a process that is involved. And part of that process has to do with getting outside of the mindset box, this thing that we live inside. So exposing ourselves and our team to ideas that stretch our conceptual boundaries rather than reinforcing them. Bring in stuff that seems to have absolutely no connection to the problem that you're dealing with, and see what happens. One of the things that, when I was doing a lot of work with Nokia, and I would bring some of my clients in, and they would do brainstorming sessions with the clients, they would have all kinds of stuff. And they bring it to the table, and it's, people kind of go, what does this have to do with anything? Well, let's just play with it and see what it evokes. All of a sudden, folks would start to kind of connect some stuff and play with it. This reminds me of something. And then we're off to the races. It had no logical connection to the issue at hand. But when you started to curate it and play with it, all of a sudden something emerged that had a dot connected to it that led to another dot. And all of a sudden now we've got a different possibility.
Yeah.
Now we didn't no conversation about how, no conversation about whether that was good or bad. It's just kind of, let's connect the dots and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that. When you get into that moment where you get out of it's getting out of your own way.
Yep. That's exactly what it is.
I saw this, the image, on the slide when I was looking at this last night, and at 4:00 in the morning, and looking at this thing, and it's going to be a nap afternoon. I can feel it, but looking at this, and it reminded me of a video. I recently saw a video that was sent to me by a dear friend of ours, Bob Proctor, and one of the things that and it was a video with Bob talking about an hourglass, and in the hourglass he talked about the top part of the hourglass that's the future. We can't see it. We don't know what's going to happen. The throttle in the middle is now, and the bottom part is the past. That's come and gone. And it is, and it really made me stop. And I thought it was wholly appropriate. Again, another tip of the hat to our pal, but it was wholly appropriate thinking about that this morning. When we're talking about imagination, we're asking the question: what can the future be like? What can we do? What is the possibility, which hooks into, right, at least 3 possible solutions never considered. What can we consider that we've never done before?
Yep.
What can we consider that's new? And that's that top of that hourglass. We've not lived those grains of sand yet. Yeah. So what can we do in those grains of sand before they hit the choke point and they become our past?
Yep. If there's nothing that you take away from this little thing that we're doing in this hour today, this whole piece can absolutely transform the way that you and your organization, your team works. Yeah, because it's easy to come up with a solution. Yeah, and then but it's the lazy move to walk away with that solution. Come up with, as soon as you've got a solution to something, come up with at least 3 things that you've never thought of before. Well, and here's psychologically how this works. Once you've got the solution, the mind can kind of rest a little. It's kind of like, okay, we got that handled. Now let's imagine. Because most people in business, what's your job? I'm a problem solver. That's what almost all conversations and organizations are around. How do we solve this problem? Get a solution, fine. Now park it. Now let's go back to the bank here. Let's go back to the trough. Let's go back into spirit and imagine, how would this be expressed fully with that worthy ideal in mind? With that worthy, not just focused on solving the problem, but how do we solve this problem in a way that gets us closer to that worthy ideal? What's 3 possible ways that would get us closer to that worthy ideal rather than just solving the problem, which will keep us where we are anyway?
Yes.
Causing movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the 100-year vision. It's interesting because it's something that we tend to think as leaders, we tend to think about quarter, year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. We tend to think in that, right? That term. But when you expand that out to that greater vision,
Yeah.
and think of that moving possibility into, when you think of that, it is the dynamic that changes and how you look towards the future shifts. Now, when you think of that 100-year vision and go back to your 1-year vision, go back to your 3-year and reimagine again from that place of I'm moving towards this ideal. This is my 100-year ideal and you will be absolutely amazed that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year that you had won't be the same.
Yep. And one of the real interesting leverages that occur with 100-year vision, Akio Morita, the founder of Sony, had a 100-year vision that he had articulated for Sony just before he died. Yeah, and it was he'd written it out. I mean, this was a document that Sony was organizing around. The power is it eliminates how.
Yeah.
100 years, how becomes irrelevant when you're 100 years out? It's kind of like, whatever. I just see this thing. It's kind of, wow, that is a possibility that would be really cool to realize. Whoa. Okay, let's back that truck up. What's the first thing I need to do today to make that happen? That's that incremental for the sake of what? Move. And that first step, we go back to the chess game. That first step, here's the completed game. It's 100 years out. Yeah. Between now and 100 years, there are going to be more possible moves than you can possibly imagine. And you have no idea what they're going to be, but you want to be able to make that first move in pursuit of that worthy ideal.
Yep. Yeah.
And you can literally create magic with that. This is where phase shifts occur. You're now operating at a completely different mindset and a completely different level. You're paying attention to different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good explanation for it. That's why I love that. And I think it's funny you mentioned that because I've heard you talk about that before, about the 100-year vision that he did before he passed. And I would challenge all of us, those of you leading an organization, those of you that are founders in your own organizations. What's your 100-year vision? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And again, we're putting a lot of money on the table today. Again, I would put a check out there that says your things will change when you go back to that, because it is, what is that one step today that moves me towards that goal? Yeah. Rather than I take a step today and boy, I hope, and boy, and I'm hoping, And where are you going on vacation? I don't know. Well, I'll let you know when I run out of gas. There you go.
I hadn't heard that one before, but that kind of speaks into the notion of how do you sustain success? Well, part of it has to do with continually bringing spirit up. The definition of success that we work with our clients is it's developing. It's literally about developing the capacity to continuously start over. And I guarantee, with a 100-year timeline, you're going to be starting over a lot. You're going to be starting over a lot. Do you have the capacity? Does your team have the capacity to start over, to start new, to start fresh? Something new will emerge if you're willing to develop that capacity.
Yeah. Things will change.
Spirit will begin to show itself in funny ways.
Yes.
So
speaking
of, where are we going with this? Now, in an hour, you're going to get a fire hose. We're going to do the best we can to give you as much as we can. We want to make it actionable. It's one thing just to have this stuff kind of floating around, but how do you actually leverage it? And nothing happens until something moves. And you are the one that needs to move. You need to do something with it. If you're intent on scaling your organization, scaling your team, scaling yourself to a different level, a breakthrough performance.
Yeah.
You got to do something a little different. And, literally, well, and again, studies show this, only about 20 to 30% of participants in any kind of developmental program actually follow through with what they said they were going to do unless there's additional support provided. So we want to provide some additional support. And the way we're going to invite you to do that is next week, beginning on Monday, June 2nd, June 2nd. Spit my gum out here. 5-day leadership challenge. This is free. Yeah. We're going to spend an hour a day beginning at 9 a.m. Pacific time here in the West Coast of the United States. And we're going to unbundle this conversation around leadership in some real specific ways. So the invitation, it's no obligation. Register by going to this URL, or you can just literally scan the Q code there, the QR code. And you'll go to a landing page that let you sign up. And again, there's no obligation. It's a free challenge. And we're going to, like I said, talk about and unbundle key concepts in this leadership conversation. Going back to that puzzle metaphor, let's pick the puzzle up and see where pieces are connected and see what we can actually provide. We've got some specific takeaways, outcomes that you can expect. So what might those be, Doland? What might the takeaways be?
So I will briefly describe it. So here's what happens. So every day in the challenge, a lot of challenges that we've all attended challenges in one form or another as leaders or as business owners. When you attend a challenge, it's a lot of this. So the intention for the challenge that Blaine and I have created, this is our 5th time we've done this challenge, by the way. I was counting the other day. This is the 5th time. And they continually evolve a little bit. This is a working challenge. So in the challenge, we're every day there's a worksheet that goes through it. There's homework that goes home with you. There's a breakout group within the body of the challenge where we have an opportunity for you to interact with other leaders and other participants in the challenge for 10 minutes and spend time working through what we do. So that happens on a daily basis. And I won't get into the daily topics and kind of the ebb and flow of it. But at the end of the challenge, we send you home with a 30-day actionable plan on how to take what we did in the body of 5 days and apply it to you, your team, and your business. All 3 domains. So you can take this document. It's about a 9-pound PDF. I actually just learned, Blaine taught me good technology. I learned how to flatten it. So it's not 49 megabytes anymore. It's smaller. But as we do that, it's an opportunity then for you to take a document, go back, and then have something to take action with, not just a bunch of handwritten notes. And we'll encourage you to take notes and participate. But that is the outcome of the challenge. We invite you to come to the challenge. It is not a pitch fest. We will not be talking about stuff through the body of the challenge. At the end, we'll tell you about other stuff if you're interested in it. During the body of the challenge, we're there to work. And we're there to do this transformation together. And that's why it's called a leadership transformation. And it dives deeply into some of the topics we talked and worksheets. You get to take it all home. And the recordings are available to you after. And there's a private LinkedIn group that's available to you. And there's a bunch of other things that happen. So come join us. It's 1 hour. And I think you'll find the body of the challenge to be extremely beneficial for the hour that you invest. Come invest in yourself and hang out with us.
Perfect. And again, the recording piece on this, you will not have access to the recording unless you register. Just
correct.
To kind of make that point.
And show up.
Yeah. So if you have some schedule conflicts, that happens. So, but if you're registered, you will have access, assuming that you kind of put the good faith effort into it.
Yes.
And
try.
The challenge part of it is you'll walk away with a 30-day plan to put this stuff into practice, a 30-day plan. That's our promise to you. You will have a 30-day plan that will be actionable and that is designed to transform, at least begin the process of transforming the way that you lead yourself and your organization. So
there you go. So come to the challenge. That will also, since this is live on LinkedIn For both Blaine and I, this will show up in both of our threads. In both of our threads, we'll edit the link in there, so you'll be able to also not only have to grab it here. If you didn't grab it, it'll be inside of the post with this feed here in just a couple of moments. So,
yeah.
On that note,
thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging in there for an hour, and we will see you next Thursday at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific time for another Power of You.
We'll be there. See you there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.